And you as an entrepreneur, you might have a natural tendency towards one or the other thing. You might be the kind of person who wakes up every day and working on your business is something that is natural to you. It's what you think about. You're thinking about those next steps all of the time. Or you might be someone who wakes up and it's much more natural for you to do those more like operational tasks, tangible tasks, like checking those types of things off of the list. And the truth is, to have a successful business, you need both of those things. You can't only be thinking about growth and you can't only be thinking about like getting stuff done. You need to have a balance in both of those things.
Welcome to the Her First podcast. We're all about helping female identifying business owners, coaches, and creators build their dream life by putting themselves in the driver's seat.
If you want to transform your business and build the life you want, then make sure to follow our podcast and stay tuned for what's next.
Welcome back to the Her First podcast. Today, we're talking about the difference between working in your business versus working on your business. And you've probably heard the terminology before and maybe thought like, well, what's the difference? And when do I know when I'm working on versus in? And what do those tasks and activities look like? And how am I supposed to appropriately appoint my time? And where am I supposed to be putting my focus depending on the stage, the season that my business is in? So we're going to chat all about that today. And to get started, let's talk about differentiating between the two so you understand where we're coming from when we use that terminology, on versus in. So working in your business looks simply like handling day-to-day operations. It's the executive tasks. It's keeping the business running. That looks like client work that you're doing, any customer service, emails, managing teams, anything that happens on a day-to-day basis, whether you're just creating content, you're filming, you're putting things together that's being executed on a consistent basis to help you move the business forward. It's like the meat and potatoes of your business. It's the foundation. It's what makes up your business as a whole. That's working in your business. Now, working on your business is all about growth. It's all about strategy. It's all about that big picture vision. What are you working towards? What are you cultivating? What are you creating for the future? And how are you going to expand, grow, and scale the execution of your day-to-day operations? So that's business development. It's improving processes or systems. It's thinking about scale from an exponential growth perspective. How are you going to get it in front of more people? How are you going to create products and programs in your ascension model? What does that strategic footprint look like? And how are you going to continue to move forward in the long term? So that's the distinction between on versus in. And we'll be chatting a lot about how to focus that energy so that you can divide time between the two, so that you're not only just executing on what it is that you do from an operational standpoint, but that you're actually thinking towards the future and how to scale and grow your business over time.
And you as an entrepreneur, you might have a natural tendency towards one or the other thing. You might be the kind of person who wakes up every day and working on your business is something that is natural to you. It's what you think about. You're thinking about those next steps all of the time. Or you might be someone who wakes up and it's much more natural for you to do those more like operational tasks, tangible tasks, like checking those types of things off of the list. And the truth is, to have a successful business, you need both of those things. You can't only be thinking about growth and you can't only be thinking about like getting stuff done. You need to have a balance in both of those things. I'm the kind of person who my natural tendency is to like get shit done and to be on that working in your business thing. And that has made me very successful, but I've had to figure out how to find time and space to work on that next level. Because if you don't do that, you'll get into a plateau. So it's really about figuring out, one, that they are two different things. And then two, and I'm sure we'll talk about this today, making sure you're doing both of those things and finding a way to make that part of your week, your month, your year.
It's important to integrate both. And it's so funny because Joanna is that integrator tendency of execution, operations, making sure that things are getting done consistently. on a regular basis. And I have that visionary mentality of working on the business. So all I want to talk about is strategy, growth, potential, what's coming next. And I have a more difficult time working in the business of consistency, constant output, regular activities to keep the business going. Knowing that you may have a tendency toward one or the other, you may have a strong suit, but that you can figure out how to balance both. And it doesn't always mean that you're the one who's doing both, right? So let's talk about strategies for effectively working in your business. Depending on your stage, this is always going to look a little bit different, whether you're just getting started or whether you've been in business for 10 years. The important thing with working in your business is that you can prioritize and delegate or appoint appropriately. So, task management, using simple software or tools. We've talked about Monday.com before, Asana, Trello, Google, whatever it is that you use for your workflow is figuring out how those tasks and activities in your business are going to be set up in an effective way. And there are a lot of things that you aren't necessarily going to be able to do in your business alone. So, thinking, who is the team member? What is the support that I need in order to get these regular and consistent things done? If you're someone like myself who doesn't like the executive tasks, the execution tasks rather, then you're going to want to find someone, whether that's a virtual assistant, a social media manager, an operations manager, someone who's actually going to execute those tasks and activities for you on a daily and consistent basis to keep you on track, to keep you moving forward. We oftentimes get stuck in that solopreneur mindset, especially if you're an online digital business, you're a personal brand. Sometimes you think like, well, I started doing everything, so I just have to keep doing everything, or I'm the only one who can do it, or I can't afford someone to pay in order to do it. But we have to figure out a way that we can kind of rethink those strategies and then delegate some of those non essential tasks that you might be doing that's costing you more than you're making. So if you have the potential to make $100 an hour, $1,000 an hour, whatever it breaks down for you, but you're doing $10 tasks, you've got to shift that mindset and start to think about how you can delegate, how you can hire, how you can work around some of those non essential tasks. And then having the processes and systems. So making sure that you can figure out things that you're doing on a regular, consistent basis. How can you automate it? How can you plan it? How can you schedule it? How can you coordinate it in a way so that it kind of fits seamlessly into your workflow, that you're not doing the same things manually over and over and over again, so that when you're working in your business, which we've said is non negotiable, you have to do those things, that you actually figure out a system, a workflow, a process, a way that is the most efficient for your investment of time. Because so often we get stuck working in the business that we don't think about the scale. And like Joanna mentioned, that's when you plateau. That's when you hit that ceiling and you think to yourself, I feel stuck or I feel overwhelmed. That's typically when you're stuck working in the business on the tasks and activities that aren't helping you grow, but are necessary in order to keep the business running. There are some things within there that maybe aren't as necessary. And so, what can you actually cut out, or what can you get rid of in order to be more successful in execution?
And what this looks like for me in my business is being like a doer, an integrator type. What I tend to do is not for everything we do, but for a lot of what we do, I will be the doer for a while, figure out a process, figure out what it's like. And then when I've hit my max, I'll take that, turn it into a job and pass it to someone. Right. And for me, I'm pretty good at developing those processes as I go. And then I can kind of package it, make an SOP, create an official standard process, and then give that to a team member to take over. And I always know that we're ready when I'm way too overwhelmed. I'm in this phase right now and I have a plan to work through it, but it's like I was doing a job. That job got too big for me to do along with all of my other things. Now it's time to pass it on. And you have to be aware of that. If you're like my style of entrepreneur, when you get to that point where you're like, I'm too busy, that's a good sign you need to move it to someone. And if you don't have the margin to be able to make that change, you may need to adjust your pricing. Like if you're a service-based business and you're doing that work and you're doing all of this work and you're working around the clock and you're not actually having enough money to hire someone to do that, maybe it's time to up your prices because that's the value that has. You have to think about that in the process.
Yeah, and we speak to content creators, freelancers, business owners, founders on this podcast, really ultimately those who are creating a side hustle, already have one, or are fully invested in their businesses as a whole. People at different levels. And so a lot of times if you start in the freelancer outlet, which is very common, especially if you're a service-based business, you start just doing things for people. Even as a virtual assistant, you start doing things for people. But if you're looking to scale, if you're looking to build a business, you've got to figure out how to remove your time and energy from the equation and have people, have systems, have workflows in place that take the part of your actual time, energy, and focus, the work that you're doing in order to build a business as a whole. When you tend to focus on the in of your business, it often can lead to that burnout. It can lead to that overwhelm. It can lead to that frustrated place of like, I'm doing so much, but my business isn't growing. I'm not reaching more people. I'm not actually able to scale effectively. That's typically because you're stuck on those repetitive daily tasks. And it's going to either take automations and workflows or it's going to take hiring. So figuring out where you sit in that and then deciding what is important for you to do. What are the tasks and activities that are non-negotiable that you either, one, just love doing and you want to invest the time and energy into it, and that's important for you to stay passionate about your business? Or what are the things that you as an individual have to do within your business? And then all of the other tasks and activities, how can you start to delegate, automate, or get rid of in order to continue to help the progress or movement of your business overall? So, working on your business, strategies to do this more effectively as you're thinking about the growth, you're thinking about the scalability, you're thinking about the future, you're thinking about that overarching picture of what your business looks like and how you're going to move forward into the future. So, being able to time block is really important for both of these, but especially when it comes to working on your business. The strategic time that you allow yourself, for a lot of founders, a lot of business owners call it the deep focus work. And usually these should be larger time blocks. So, like 4 hours, if you can allow it, to really integrate into working on your business, get into the strategic planning. Anything less than that, and you're prone to distractions, it'll take you time to get into it. You're not going to be able to actually think through some of those bigger picture things. Obviously, if you don't have that amount of time to get started, start with smaller blocks and just at least set aside some time for it. But this should be on a consistent basis. You don't just do this one time a year and then say, oh, I'm good on strategic planning for the entire year. You should really be coming back to this. We've talked about this from like a goal setting perspective and coming back to the table, but you have a long yearly day or weekend set aside for the strategic planning, whether that's the year beforehand or at the beginning of the year, however you operate. But then you also need to block out time on a quarterly, monthly, even weekly basis to come back to the strategic planning. Because what's going to happen is you're going to set a strategy, you're going to set a plan of action. And then on a day to day working in your business, you're going to get distracted. You're going to get pulled in different opportunities. You're going to be pulled in different directions that are going to get you off track. So you've always got to come back to the strategy. You've got to reassess it, and you may need to change it based on where you are at that time. Focusing on long-term goals. So it's important to have both short and long-term goals. So envisioning what that looks like for the future. What does the next year look like? What does the next 3 years look like? What does the next 5 years look like? Some people think it's not reasonable to think out 10 years, but even from a simple perspective, where do you want to be in 10 years? Even from just like a one short sentence perspective, does that mean you've helped a certain number of clients? Does that mean you've reached a certain audience goal? Is that financial for you? And kind of looking on the bigger picture, what is that larger vision? Because that's going to ground you in your daily activities, going to ground you in your tasks. And then, of course, when you're coming back to the drawing board on a quarterly, monthly, weekly basis, that's your actionable steps. And that guides your working in the business. So a lot of people get frustrated and overwhelmed because they're just doing tasks and activities haphazardly. They're like, oh, I saw someone tell me that I have to do this thing, and so I'm going to do that. Or I've just been doing this for the past 5 years, so I'm going to stick with it. But they don't ever stop to question, what are the action steps that I need to be taking to accomplish my goals right now? And so when you can step back and look at those questions, then you can actually set the tasks and activities of working in your business from a really grounded strategic perspective, and you have clarity on the tasks and activities that you're executing on a regular, daily, weekly basis. And then part of that strategy, and we've talked about this plenty before, but there's so much personal development and growth that comes with business strategy and overarching big picture vision that comes with who you are, your brand identity, and how you're showing up in your business as a whole. And that's going to take personal development and growth. It's going to take your ability to ask the harder questions. And so, whether that for you is workshops, webinars, masterminds, group programs, personal self reflection and development, whether you're buying a book or listening to a podcast or taking time to meditate, is being able to actually step back, take the time, ask these questions, help yourself move through this, and then get guidance where you need it. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to be challenged or feel like you're hitting a wall, you're encountering the same blocks over and over again. There are resources, there are coaches, there are mentors, there are people who are here to guide you through that and help you with the overarching business strategy. If maybe you are more prone to working in your business, you come from that freelancer background, you just are focused on tasks and activities, how do you even set up a strategy? How do you think forward? How do you build a scalable picture of where you're headed? Get the support. Joanna coaches, I coach. We have plenty of resources that we can always direct you to and that you can find in order to get that guidance, to get that feedback and help direct you in the way that you are looking to head. And so just continuing to challenge yourself on that front and really give yourself the time, the space, the reflection away from the computer, away from your phone to sink into what it is that you want, where the business is heading, and have that more strategic picture as a whole.
It can be really tempting when you're a business owner to just like keep working and working and working and working and working. And when you have a mountain of tasks to do and when you have a lot of deadlines or things that need to be done, it can be so tempting to just go, 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 go. When in reality, a lot of like your best ideas that make the biggest movement for your business come when you take a step back. And obviously there's a reality. There are tasks that have to be done, especially as you're trying to scale. Scaling is like the hardest thing. Getting from one phase to another does take a lot of work and it does take a lot of time and working in your business. But if you're stuck there, you're never going to be able to get to that next level. And you also might be spinning your wheels on something that's totally unnecessary. You're just doing it to do it. And you're like, wait, that's not even making us money. That's not pushing us towards our goal, or it's not making us better in any way. So being able to take that time to take a step back, think about what problems you have, how you can solve it, how you can make your business more efficient, how you can create new product lines or new revenue streams or whatever that is so important and needs to be part of your schedule in your day.
Yeah, it's the long-term picture of where you're headed in your business. And that can even be considered, if you're getting client and customer feedback, which we've talked about is really important on this podcast before. And if you're enjoying this content, hit subscribe. Share this with a friend who could also hear some helpful business tips where they prioritize themselves and their business for success in the long term. But if you're thinking towards the long-term function of your business, if you're getting customer and client feedback, you've got to be able to analyze and assess that. You got to be able to make decisions around that. And if you're just doing, you're not taking that reflective moment to be able to look at the analytics of your Instagram social media strategy. Doing that on a monthly or quarterly basis can be really helpful in dictating or determining your strategy moving forward. I get into the habit of this all the time, is just doing the same thing over and over again because that's how I've always done it, but it might not be as effective. It might not be working. You might need to switch things up, and it takes working on your business in order to change the direction, to change the in your business tasks. So knowing that you have the ability to do that, making sure that you structure the time in order to do that, make sure you create the space for it. And you can prep out in advance, like set aside time to plan for the time that you take. So if you're like, oh, I have a 4-hour time chunk, but then you get to the 4-hour time chunk and you have no idea what you're doing to work on your business from a strategic perspective, prepare questions in advance. Know that you're going to ask yourself about key categories within your business, whether that's customer service, client relations, client acquisition, lead generation, content strategy, like your ascension ladder, products and programs, pick something to focus on and say, okay, I'm going to rework my ascension ladder in this time blocked deep focus work so that I walk away with a clear path of customer ascension, and that I have a low ticket, a mid ticket, a high ticket, and then I have a model in place to actually continue working with these people over time. And that's a clear structure and strategy for how you go into that work time so that you don't feel like you're lost or you don't know what to focus on or what to do. So being really intentional about how you use that time and space is important, and you can prep and plan for that as well. So when you tend to avoid the working on your business, that looks like plateaus, lack of growth. It can feel like stagnation. You are getting little things done, but you feel like you're not really moving bigger projects forward. It can feel frustrating. And you might be actually like losing clients in a natural cycle, but not gaining more. So that can be a part of the process as well. So thinking about that strategy about acquisition and where you're going to reach new people is a big part of working on your business that you have to think about, you have to consider in order to continue forward. So some of the things that we see business owners kind of get trapped in when they're dealing with this on versus in, or they've spread themselves a little too thin, or they're not really focused or prioritizing the right tasks and activities at the right time for what it is that they're doing. And some of the ways to kind of work around that. So, firstly, people often get stuck in the day to day activities when that's where they're comfortable. And that's what they know how to do. So if you are someone who transitioned from an employee opportunity to a business owner, a freelancer opportunity, oftentimes you're going to have habits, behaviors, and patterns that you are just used to performing. You clock into work at the beginning of the day, you have this list of tasks and activities to do, you clock out, you're done, and that's it. And so a lot of times people get stuck in that kind of employee mindset when they're just working in their business. And so that's the normal tasks and activities. People get stuck when they're reactive or responsive. So instead of being proactive, creative, and thinking about the new opportunities that they can pursue, they're responding to emails, they're dealing with customer complaints, they're just delivering on the service that they agreed to deliver on. Those are some of the things in which people often get stuck in their business doing. And then for on the business, that's more of that dreamer personality. That's more of getting distracted with shiny object syndrome. So if you find yourself constantly being like, oh, this is a new opportunity, I'm going to go down that route, but I'm going to forget the consistency in the tasks and activities that I was maintaining before this, or the working in the business that I was doing that was actually getting me to success. I'm going to ignore all that and I'm going to go to this new thing and I'm going to try out this new thing. Or it can look like lots of planning, but not taking action. So when you get stuck working on your business, that looks like I'm going to map out this social strategy for the next year. And then I'm never going to implement any of those posting, or I'm going to do like a week and then I'm going to fall off a week and then I'm going to get distracted and move over here. Those are kind of the traps and the pitfalls that we often see business owners falling into. And when it comes to kind of splitting time between the either or, the in or the on, you have to decide what you can kind of delegate and appoint or like send to automation or workflow from an in perspective, but that still maintain the consistency of your success and how you generate income in your business and deliver on the operations or administration of what it is that you do, while also just taking that time out. And whether that's just like once a week that you set aside on the calendar for growth and strategy, is finding that balance between the two.
Yeah, and one of the things that I see often with business owners when I work with them is not actually fully getting that your strategy and your execution are actually two different things. And one of the ways this can be really evident is like one of the things I'll do is like funnel audits or website audits or something like that. And whenever I do that, I always take a step back and talk to them about how they get customers. How do you currently get customers? Where do you find them? What's that sales cycle like? Like, what is working? And 9 times out of 10, their website or funnel and the sales strategy that is actually working don't match up. Like, they don't have the tools that they need to properly, like, execute the strategy that they're doing, because they don't think of strategy and execution as two different things. So you need to take that step back. Even if you're both, if you're a solopreneur or you have a small team, you don't have a big budget and you're doing both things. Say you need a website. This is a very practical example. Say you need a website. If you say, I'm going to tomorrow make my website, and then you go make your website, but you didn't actually separate time to think through the strategy, what are the pages you need? What should it look like? Journey, right? If you didn't think through that strategy and you wake up to do the website, your website isn't going to have any strategy. So it might exist, it might live, but is it strategically involved for what you actually are building? Does it match? Are you picking the things that you need at the highest priority that are going to get sales coming in, and then you'll build this other thing in the next phase, right? Have you thought through that? So what that would look like if your goal for the week was to make your website even by yourself, if you took the whole day Monday to think through the strategy, what are the pages I need? What are the things? What's my business strategy? How does this website help with that? The next day, you're like, I'm just thinking about copy. That's a high level strategy task. I'm going to map that out. And that's before you hit that execution stage of actually putting it on a page. And I think sometimes we think of all of those things together instead of like different phases.
Absolutely. There's a distinction between the two, which is why we're talking about differentiating them. The in versus the on. It's not the in on, it's not the on in, it's not together, it's separate. And that's why it's so important to distinguish is having the strategy and the plan of action, even if everything doesn't go according to plan. It's like having and setting aside the time for the strategy and the vision is distinctly different than doing the thing. And people totally merge those two. So, excellent point, Joanna. And thinking for yourself where you might be doing that and how you can start to separate these things out. So, we've talked about kind of the pitfalls that people fall into. We've talked about the distinction between on versus in. We've given you some strategies, but more specifically, here are some things to start thinking differently about how you're approaching working within your business whenever you're investing time, energy, thought, and then distinguishing between the task activities, the strategy, and what it is that you're doing. So, one of the places to start is prioritization. Like, you've got to be able to prioritize high impact activities as the business owner, as the founder of your company. If you're in that freelancer content creator space, it's a little bit different because yes, you are a business owner, but really if you're a solopreneur and you're driving the core of your business, it's going to be different. And I want you to start thinking about how you can start to shift toward the future of being the business owner or the founder and not the person who is the key thing delivering your product or your programs, because you don't have to be. And granted, if you want to stay in the freelancer category, I want to say that's totally fine. Absolutely no judgment. You don't have to go either direction. But if you do want to have a business that offers more time freedom, more flexibility, more opportunity for the future, as well as scalability and growth, you are always going to be your biggest limiting factor. So consider that and think importantly about how you're prioritizing the things that you're doing. So often, and I fall into this trap even today. Like, I am not excellent at this because I struggle with just wanting to kind of knock off the easy things off my checklist and not put the time and energy into the really important things. And so we're in pitch deck creation mode. And I've spent so much time and so much energy on these and gotten a ton of feedback. And now I have to get my feedback and my notes to my graphic designer to do the things. And it's just like, it takes a lot of mental energy. And so it's really easy to be like, oh, I'm just going to put some time into some content. Oh, I'm just going to put some time into emails. Oh, I'm just going to pitch these people. Oh, I'm going to do this podcast interview. Like, those are all really great things. But I'm kind of avoiding the high priority, important, like mental focus, deep focus work activities. And I have to recognize that. And you have to recognize that for yourself. Where are you avoiding certain things that are actually going to move you forward? So identifying the tasks and activities that are going to drive the value in your business. And again, thinking about what is it that you are responsible for doing? What are those important things that only you can do? And then how can you reappoint other activities, tasks, delegate, hire in order to help with those other things that are pulling your time and your attention? Managing your time is so incredibly important as a business owner, as a freelancer, as someone who governs their own time. So, as an employee, you clock in, you're given tasks, you have meetings maybe set for you. You're not necessarily in charge of what you're doing. As a business owner, as a content creator, as someone who's out there trying to change the world, being an entrepreneur, you are responsible for your schedule, hands down. And you get to dictate and determine how your schedule is leveraged. And the more you can scrutinize this, the better off you will be. So, whether you're time blocking, again, for that deep focus work or other activities that are similar, so you're time blocking for all content creation or you're time blocking for all meetings instead of trying to context switch back and forth. We have a great podcast episode that covers more of those ways of working that can be really helpful. Setting boundaries on your time and energy by either limiting distractions, so turning your phone on work mode, not responding to your email or having an email tab open so that you can see incoming messages so that you're not being reactive, you're being proactive in how you're working, turning off any notifications, not getting social media interruptions, like all super, super important. And then sticking to those boundaries, right? Like you've set those parameters for yourself and for other people, knowing that people cannot take your time if you do not allow it. You're in charge of your schedule. And then with the setting boundaries, so often we say yes to things that are not important. This is one of the things like that Alex Hermosi does that I really appreciate. There's a lot of people who want to have conversations with him. And those other people might be important, they might be helpful, but he really limits his access from people. It really prioritizes his time, his energy, and his work above everything else because so often we get pitched all the time for people who want to be on the podcast. We get pitched for software. We get pitched for people who can help us expand our YouTube channel. And if we entertained every meeting, every request, everything that someone reached out to us for, we would never get anything done. And the progress and the scale and even the execution of your daily activities is going to get derailed. And we do this by signing up for workshops and webinars. We do this with people's newsletters. We do this with distractions on social media and going down a rabbit hole. And so when we can recognize that we have the ability to say no, to seize that opportunity if it feels aligned or if we feel called to it, but that also it's okay to say no to any theoretical opportunity that doesn't align with your business goals, what you're doing right now, or what your focus is. So, feeling okay and comfortable politely declining those people who are trying to trying to garner your time and attention because that's what everybody wants and that's what everyone's pushing for. So, politely finding that way of saying, does this work for me? Is this aligned? Yes, no, and then reacting or responding accordingly.
It's really important here to be very self-aware because you as an individual, you're going to have different tendencies to what you avoid doing, what you easily do, how you spend your time. Like everybody's going to have their own little mix. And I think some people lean towards like, I'm going to dream all day about all the possibilities and never do anything. And some people are just going to be stuck responding to emails and texts and social notifications all day. I think it's important to be self-aware of who you are and understand realistically what you do and how you get things done. And what I mean by that is for me, if I say, "Oh, I'm going to do that next week," and it's a high level working on my business task, it's very easy for me to pick a client's deadline over mine every single time. But if I have a meeting scheduled with a teammate to discuss that thing, I will do it. I will get that plan done. Like I will. And I know that about myself, right? So I could keep saying, "Oh, I'll work on that. I'll work on that." And I never do and just keep doing that over and over again. Or I can say, "You know what? I know this is hard for me to get done. So I'm going to come up with a strategy that's going to help me get that thing done." One thing I do for email respondents because I got a lot of emails. It's the situation I'm in. But I've started saying, okay, I'm just going to spend 30 minutes going through my emails and I'm going to get through as many as I can in that 30 minutes. Then I'm going to go work on a project and then I'm going to go back, right? Because for me, I could let myself just react all day, but instead I kind of switch back and forth and say 30 minutes on my emails, an hour on this, 30 minutes on my emails, an hour on this throughout my day. Because I don't have necessarily my own self control. If I give myself a schedule or a plan, or I do workarounds to help me do the things that I struggle getting done, really helps me be productive. And if you just keep telling yourself and make no plan, oh, I'll do that, I'm going to be better this week, and there's no plan behind it, you're going to have a hard time actually changing your habits.
Understanding yourself, understanding your strengths, understanding what your kind of nature is, and then also your skill set, the experience that you have, what you've been able to bring to the table, finding that self awareness, being able to sit back to reflect, where do I like investing my time? What do I want my business to look like as a whole? How do I want to show up in the world? Who would I want to be? Like answering those questions for yourself really allows you to see, oh, I have been doing this for the past 5 years, but I actually don't like doing it. So I'm going to find someone who's going to do it better than me, more effectively, more efficiently. And they're actually going to enjoy it because surprisingly, the things that you really can't stand, somebody else loves, which I know is hard to conceptualize sometimes because you're like, oh, God, I hate spreadsheets, or I hate posting to social media, or I hate this thing. How could anybody else like it? But trust me, with 8 billion people in this world and loads of others that you have access to, that sounded weird because it seemed like other
Because
worlds.
it's like the other
Because
way.
it sounded like,
and like
the other.
8 billion people and loads more, because there's all of these other people in all the other worlds.
All the other worlds, not that. So with all of the people that you have access to, there are people who would gladly help and support you, and it's actually not as expensive as you think it is. And you're probably, again, sacrificing income by doing the things that you don't like in your business. So I hope that this has been helpful, working on versus working in your business. Again, working on is that overarching strategy. It's that bigger vision. It's thinking through the deeper things that are going to drive you forward, that are going to give you scale and growth. And then working in are those things that are operational, they're executive tasks, they're things that need to happen in order to move your business along and keep it operating at a high level. Both are critically important. You've got to figure out how to balance your time between both and invest in both appropriately. That doesn't even necessarily mean evenly. If you're working a 40-hour work week, you're not investing 20 hours in and 20 hours in on. We're not saying that, but it's about figuring out for you with your business what season you're in so that you are continuing to execute at a high level, having the team, having the space for those automations and workflows, but also thinking about long-term growth and strategy over time so that you don't reach that plateau, so that you're not feeling stagnant, so that you continue to see growth in your business, because that's what we're all after. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Hit that subscribe button and we'll see you soon. Thanks for tuning in. Find the link in the show notes to join us in our free Facebook group to discuss the podcast, ask questions of our guest experts, and network with a group of female entrepreneurs who value collaboration over competition.
Please subscribe, share, leave a review, and be sure to catch our next episode. What is one thing you can do today to prioritize you in business and life?